On Thursday, 11th of February 2021, all roads led to the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta FUNAAB, specifically the Postgraduate School Auditorium, the venue for the gathering of academic agates, farmers, and other critical stakeholders, where a well-thought-out discourse on climate-smart agriculture technologies, innovations, and management practices were brought to the fore. Organized by the Southwest Zone of the Nigerian Forum for Agricultural Advisory Services, NIFAAS. With strict adherence to COVID-19 protocols, the event also drew professionals, government officials, and policymakers from different sectors, among whom are the Ogun State Commissioner for Education, Science and Technology, Professor Abayomi Arigbabu, the Speaker of the State House of Assembly, represented by the Chairman House Committee on Information and Culture, Honorable Yusuf Adejojo, Vice Chancellor of the East University, Professor Felix Salako, represented by Professor Jonathan Atungo, who is the Director, Institute of Food Security, Environmental Resources and Agricultural Research, ISRA, FUNAAB, President of NIFAAS, among others.
This is a way that I think NIFAAS is coming up with the support of AFAS. AFAS is the African Forum, indicating that while NIFAAS is the umbrella in Nigeria, I think AFAS is the umbrella in Africa. If NIFAAS and AFAS are only operating in Nigeria and Africa, it then means that Nigerians are really very smart people that can touch the entire world, which means that we can even have a world body of agricultural advisory services that will help farmers throughout the world.
Earlier, in their separate speeches, the Chairman, Local Organizing Committee, Dr. Adefunke Ainde, and Mr. Adeomi Adeshina, the Southwest Coordinator of the National Agricultural Extension and Research Liaison Services, who represented the President of NIFAAS, Professor Dele Tologbonse, were optimistic of a rewarding experience.
Because of the changing climate that we have, we all know that things are no longer the same. Even the smallholder farmers, the corporate farmers, the researchers. So we are here to know the state of the climate-smart agricultural technologies, innovations, and management practices. It's a great day for NIFAAS, and this is happening in the 6 geopolitical zones, almost simultaneously.
At the end of today, we will be able to come together and put together a comprehensive communique of document that can enhance the formation of policies that will adequately address climate-smart agriculture in our country.
Professor Stella Odebode also ruled out the visions, missions, and objectives of NIFAAS.
NIFAAS is not only meant for those of us in agricultural extension, but other professionals that could learn and then that could contribute to the issue of food security in Nigeria, so that we will make impact at the national level, link up with the global level or the global organization for us to be able to ensure food security in our nation and at the global level.
The panel discussion, moderated by Professor Kola Adebayo, the Chief Executive Officer of Sustainable Livelihoods and Development, Sloden, Africa, and Mr. Godwin Atia from the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, Ibadan.
While the population is increasing, another dimension is that for the agricultural sector, it is becoming increasingly difficult for farmers to actually predict when to plant, for instance, their crops.
Dr. John Oyedepo of FUNAAB's Institute of Food Security, Environmental Resources and Agricultural Research, ISRA.
The first thing I want to recommend is that there should be a agricultural census.
And Dr. Akim Makinde of the Agro-Meteorology and Water Resources Management, FUNAAB.
Any technology that will make us enjoy or possibly gain from this climate change is climate smart.
As well as Dr. Yemisi Adebisi Adelani of the Nigerian Institute of Horticultural Research and Training, Ibadan.
Even weather information, how do they get it? It is very difficult for farmers to have access to that.
And Dr. Kehinde Thomas from the Agricultural Extension Department, University of Ibadan, Nigeria.
To ensure proper uptake, it is required that we have what we call good and deliberate stakeholders engagement mapping.
The first port of call by the panelists was an explanation of the concept of climate-smart agriculture.
We see that the concept of climate-smart agriculture, therefore, can simply be put as a concept that aims to respond to the changes in the climate such that we are able to address the issue of sustainability, but also to increase the agricultural productivity, while at the same time ensuring that we keep at the barest minimum the issues surrounding greenhouse gas emission. There's going to be a lot of pressure on water resources, on land, and all of those. That is one. But then, while the population is increasing, another dimension is that for the agricultural sector, it is becoming increasingly difficult for farmers to actually predict when to plant, for instance, their crops, or when to even harvest. And this is all associated with climate change.
Climate smart agriculture is an integrated approach to landscape management to help in adapting to the ongoing human-induced climate change. There are three pillars when we come to talk about climate smart agriculture. Anything that will help us increase productivity and increase income. Why we are doing that? To reduce carbon emission. Because agriculture has been blamed to constitute up to 29% of the greenhouse gases. So we are trying to increase productivity, trying to reduce carbon emission, and then to make the farmers to become resilient to the issues or the impact of climate change. And resilience means to continue to cope as if that stress factor is not there. You continue to cope, and so any technology or any management practice that will help you to behave as if that threat is not there is part of the climate smart technologies that we're talking about.
So I will say lack of information. That is why a lot of people don't adopt those technologies. Because if you have information, apparently, you will willingly adopt those things and see what you stand to gain. The 2021 SRP, this is to serve as a guide for stakeholders that there have been a lot of changes that have taken place, and we need to align ourselves with this information before we invest, because it's the number one factor that determines or shows to us from the onset what you're about to go into.
Uptake dimension of technology generated is quite very low. We don't take cognizance of. Number one, to ensure proper uptake, it is required that we have what we call good and deliberate stakeholders engagement mapping. Most
people jump to the end users alone. So it starts from those who design policy, the government, to the point where we get to scholars, agri-extension practitioners, before we get to farmers. So the weak link that we have in all this is quite responsible for poor uptake as we find them. Then beyond that, we also have poor capacity building. So the concept of capacity building is required if proper uptake is going to be taken. Monitoring is, are we on the track? And evaluation is, are we at the destination? Those are the two wings that is required. And when you look at the M and E link, in extension component is quite weak. Like we are having it now, in most cases, things that relate to agriculture don't have the required support, like football. If you talk about football now for this kind of advisory service, this place will not contain us. But for agriculture, even to sponsor adverts on radio, it becomes something that is very, very difficult.
Is for us to see how we increase our investment in research and development. On the development side, which is in most cases downplayed, but also very important, is the issue of extension systems and capacity building. This is where both the Ministry of Agriculture and Education have a big role to play in building the capacity, but also in funding the extension system that we have currently. And they must also work with Ministry of Water Resources. We need to put synergies together. We need to also invest in irrigation. Irrigation shouldn't be seen as something in the north alone.
The first thing I want to recommend is that there should be a agricultural census. We should establish more climate information service platform, like early warning system. Organize those group of farmers into groups where they can receive information and then they can be trained. There should be curricular updates. There should be things like climate science. For instance, if it's very important and it's touching our lives, we should dedicate a part of our curriculum to address that, so that the students in secondary school will understand what it is, and who knows, the innovation can even come from some of them.
To embark more on action research that are demand-driven. You find out that several projects, as long as we do supply-driven, uptake will be low. If it is demanded for, it will be used. Number two, the shortage of extension personnel can be breached with technology. There are a number of applications that we have now. The AgriCloud, we have it in JAWS, is a technology that makes farmers to get information directly from their phone. It's becoming increasingly difficult for government to employ. So if we begin to say governments will employ, we are not speaking the truth. But technology can be leveraged on that. Then, lastly, because of time, we also need to employ community radio. Community radio is fizzling out now. It used to be something very good to our farmers, where farmers can tune in and listen to climate information. And once you have that, they will be able to take appropriate decisions as it is required. We used to say that farmers are the king. If we make them the king, a day where you find a farmer riding a jeep, somebody who study agriculture, we want to go into farming.
Else, we talk of horticultural waste. Try to mop up waste from horticulture. To be able to get some of these climate smart practices. Like from there we get a biochar, get a biogas, get a compost, and even we produce our mushrooms from horticultural waste. In fact, we go to the extent of moving to markets to mop up. So I think if there is a policy, as some of these waste, they're becoming problem, just like Prof mentioned about the waste in Lagos State, and if there's a policy that backs it up, that give us a kind of permit or order to go ahead and do that, instead of being away and contributing nuisance to the environment and giving us a problem with having a change in the climate, it will really be a profit thing for us, getting biochar, biogas, and compost. And even this compost, some farmers surprisingly tell you they don't know how to make it, and they will have things to use for it around them.
All those suggestions, I would say that we should make them available, especially those that are technology driven, in local dialects, such that the major stakeholders, who are our grandfather, our farmers, and other category of individuals on the field. That is why you see the customer care of all these telecommunication companies always make provisions for language options. So I would advise that local languages should be implemented in all these policy positions.
The moderator took a step further to summarize the issues raised at the panel in Yoruba.
Nínú ọ̀rọ̀ táwọn ń sọ ni pé báwo ló ṣe máa dọ́dọ̀ àwọn tó máa lò wọ́n fún wa ní ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ìmọ̀ràn lórí ọ̀nà tí àwọn iṣẹ́ ṣe ìgbàlódé tó bá ojú ọjọ́ mu yìí tí ó ṣe máa dé ọ̀dọ̀ àwọn tó máa lò. Alákọ̀ọ́kọ́ ń bẹ̀ tí mo kọ sílẹ̀ bí ni pé àwọn ọmọléèwé wa wọ́n wúlò gẹ́gẹ́ bí ẹni tí ó yẹ kó ní ìmọ̀ nípa bí ìta ṣe rí àti bí a ṣe lè ṣe iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ ní ọ̀nà tó máa bá òde mu. Wọ́n ní tá bá fún àwọn ọmọléèwé tá a ṣe wọ́n lẹ́gbẹ́lẹ́gbẹ́ tí à ń pè ní bíi climate vanguard tó jẹ́ pé lẹ́gbẹ́lẹ́gbẹ́ yìí wọ́n lè máa dára wọn nímọ̀ràn nípa gbogbo tó ń lọ ní ìdàgbàsókè nípa nǹkan ọ̀gbìn tó jẹ́ pé kò ní jẹ́ kí ìta máa gbóná sí bó ṣe ń gbóná yìí, tó jẹ́ pé ó máa jẹ́ kí ire oko wá tóbi sí láì ní jẹ́ pé iye omi tá a máa lò ó máa pọ̀ tó iye tá a ti ń lò tẹ́lẹ̀, pé àwọn ọmọléèwé wọ́n á wúlò fún wa nínú yìí.
The floor was open for the participants to make useful contributions and ask questions.
Most of us have not heard this thing on radio, on TV before. We are here today hearing it for the very first time. I want the NIFAAS to please give this thing a good publicity.
What role is organic agricultural practice going to play?
I think if the government cares much for farmers, by now they should have seen into the weather program of 2021.
The area of land occupied by Nigeria is not increasing. The demand for food products is increasing. Don't you think it's high time Nigeria formulate a policy on population control?
Let all our secondary schools in this state have at least a plot of land for agriculture. You will have been able to build a better future by doing that simple policy.
When we talk about climate smart agriculture, we have an avalanche of technologies in this country that has not been uptaken. And the very reason why they have not been uptaken is because we are moving far away from development.
Irrigation and greenhouse technology. What is the government doing to take it to the grassroots farmers?
Now, farmers are adopting all these smart, climate smart technologies that we all know are somewhat capital intensive. And at the face of what is happening today with herders, when such farmers take this and nothing is being done, to save them from the problems of herders who enter there to spoil all this, how would they be encouraged?
We have been talking about production. This extreme hotness and coldness did not affect post-harvest handling of farm produce, because we need to pay more attention to post-harvest handling of farm produce.
Some farmers will tell you that because of markets, all these things we have been talking about is about productivity, the produce from the farm. But what about the market? They will tell you, if I adopt it, do I know how much I'm selling at the market, especially when the supply is high, automatically the price will fall. What are we doing to market standardization?
We that we are discussing there cannot take it to the ground. Those people are we going to use? They are the extension workers. These extension workers are not well treated, not well motivated. If we continue to leave extension alone, we will all suffer in the future. Both states are thinking towards the line of agribusiness. And we have told them without extension, agribusiness will fail.
Irrigation. The model of irrigation matters a lot. It has to be cost effective. I observed that with the tractors we have here, some farmers have small plots. So they don't really need all these large tractors that you have.
Meanwhile, the participants expressed hope that with adequate research and implementation of the issues discussed, including greenhouse technology, there would be food security in the country.
I'm sure that all of us have been thoroughly educated. As a government, whatever comes to us in form of recommendation from this forum, we definitely want to see how we implement it. The aspect that has to do with the curriculum, as the Education Commissioner, and then don't forget that my ministry is also in charge of science and technology. So we definitely look at how we can implement some of these policy recommendations.
We must begin to educate our children about climate change and the way out of it.
We are being taught how to adapt with the new system of the climate. But I implore the federal government that they should please move along with every suggestion or resolution that is being made here today.
I'll first thank the organizers. It has been a unique opportunity to learn more about the smart agric way. What I'm taking home are things that have to do with communication.
We have also been able to harness the contributions of people from research institutes like IITA, NIFAAS, and even Ogun River Basin Development Authority that has the mandate to provide irrigation facilities for the Southwest. We have had meaningful contributions from people from the academics too.
Putting attention into the challenges facing us, we all know that the environment is already having an issue. So having a climate smart agriculture is the next thing that needs to be talked about in the country if you want to continue to have food security.
The resource person, Mr. James Oyeshola, National President of the United Nations Environment Ecosystem-Based Adaptation for Food Security Assembly in Nigeria, discussed the state of CSA TIMP's knowledge and uptake challenges and prospects with practical examples.
One of the major areas, apart from the mitigative aspect, we must also think of the socio-economic aspect and making sure we also have a kind of having our quota to national determined contributions in terms of the Paris Agreement to make sure that we bring down the carbon footprint that is causing the effects of climate change.
It is hoped that there will be quick implementation on the actionable policy recommendations made at the discourse organized by the Southwest Zone of the Nigerian Forum for Agricultural Advisory Services, NIFAAS, as Nigeria looks up to increase in agricultural productivity.